Started. So welcome everyone to today's Evolve UK webinar session. So today we're going to be looking at the UK municipal water industry and COVID-19 and just give a status update for all of you guys. So thank you for joining us. We're hoping that this information session will provide Irish SMEs with an update on the UK water industry as it emerges from lockdown and it turns towards the 50 billion Am7 cycle. So I think last time we were all together was what we like to call in Enterprise Ireland day zero now. And we seem to have the last event that went ahead before lockdown. So I hope you're all doing okay since then. And hopefully today you will be able to have a better idea of where the sector is at in the UK and have a better idea of potential opportunities that are there for you and your business. So we have a great list of speakers for you today. We have three great ones and then one okay one in myself. So our great speakers are Mark Froggatt from Anglian Water, Lee Horrocks from LCH Executive, and there's also Enterprise Ireland's market expert for the water industry. And then we have Rachel Wright from Ofwat, who's going to be talking about Ofwat's Innovation Fund. So, and then lastly, I'll be going through Enterprise Ireland supports and our push database. But I won't take any more of your time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass over to Mark. And if you have any questions for Mark or the other speakers, at the end of each of their presentations, we're going to be doing a short Q&A with each of them. So if you have any questions, you can throw them into the chat box and you can send them directly to me or into the general group, and I'll get to them and share them with Mark, Lee, or Rachel. So guys, enjoy, and make sure to take notes and make sure to ask plenty of questions. So Mark, without any further ado, I will pass it over to yourself.
Thank you. I have the honour of starting, and the good news is we start at a low position and build as we go. So you'll be pleased to know I haven't got a presentation actually to give you because, well, I suppose first of all, I'm glad to say that we all seem to be coming out of these really unusual times. This COVID-19 has been a real blow for not just our industry but for many, and I'm pleased to say that during the initial start of this crisis we managed to keep ourselves going. We had probably at the time coming towards the end of the AMP, we had a significant number of maybe 80 open construction sites, and we managed to keep most of those going, albeit well, everybody was trying to learn what was going on with the COVID-19 needs, if you like. We forced our way through and made sure that we kept everybody going. We were fortunate enough to not furlough anybody, and we've maintained the, if you like, the core business, which has been really, really good, which has helped obviously all the partners and contractors try and keep as many people away from the furlough trap as possible. So that's been a really good start, and during that process we've all been trying to align ourselves to get the programme both visible and released to give us a timely start, because one of the things that we're really keen to try and avoid is that inevitable cyclical event, which is end of AMP, where it tends to be boom and bust and famine, and then everybody then has to recover. So we've tried in our area to keep the workload going as well as we possibly can do. Have we been wholly successful? Probably not as much work as we would like. As usual, as work gets released, there's a period of time where it has to be reviewed, designed, agreed, procured before it gets to site. So the threat is always, what's the impact on the construction teams? So we've looked at our initial first year plan, and what we've tried to do is organise it in such a way that we can get boots on ground as quickly as possible. Two of the main areas for Anglian Water in this AMP are related to the one related to the WINEP programme, So like most companies at the moment, the focus is on peat removal. So we're relying heavily on our digital and a digital approach combined with our standard product approach to try and net us as many quick wins as we can to get boots on ground and get to site, which also relies on the supply chain being able to supply us what we actually need for that particular delivery stream. And also on the other side is a large storm tank program. We have probably about 130 storm tanks to build. And we're approaching that in a slightly different manner, both to reduce our carbon and increase our efficiency margins, and take a slightly different approach on that. So we would not normally build what we traditionally build. We are trying to build for a specific outcome, which is storage of additional capacity and not falling into the trap of always doing what we've done. So there's quite a few angles there that we're looking at, as well as the other standard works that we would expect within the AMP. But our focus is to pull the ones forward we can to help our supply chain, one, keep going, because I suppose it's false economy, as I've heard from some people, referring to the fact that we'll sort ourselves out, then turn to the supply chain. If we don't sort ourselves out together, the supply chain might not be there when we need them. And if you look at our forecasts going forward for year 1, 2, 3, 4 and beyond, the mountain of work that we have to actually provide is huge, absolutely huge. And our supply chain needs to be fully aligned with that. So that is our biggest challenge at the moment, to not promise jam tomorrow, because jam tomorrow doesn't help anybody pay the bills today. So we're trying our best to see whether we can forward buy, see if there's even down to the fact of trying to vest materials, if that helps. So we're trying to take a slightly different approach with our supply chain this time round. We've always had a very collaborative approach in our supply chain, but what we're really looking for now is, I suppose, heavy focus on the MIACA side and looking really for demonstrating value for money. It's no point doing the thing that we did in year 1, in year 5. That means that we've not moved in any way, shape, or form. So it's encouraging an environment where we can show improvement. What can you bring to the party? What can you do to improve our world? In the last meeting that we had before shutdown, as controversial as ever like to be, I challenged the whole process of standards and how in many organizations we produce the self-licking lollipop of a group of people making standards and then defending the standards that they make, and very rarely allowing the opportunity for innovation to come to the fore, which is great to see on the agenda today, the innovation initiative, which is absolutely essential for our industry. And we can no longer tell people what we want all the time. What we need to do is tell people what we need, and can you help me come to reach that conclusion? And we'll release a lot more. So we're trying to get our supply chain to join us in this journey, which is not an easy journey, because everybody is very nervous of the fact that they're either giving up their crown jewels or potentially leaving themselves open for whatever they may see as a risk. So commercially, we're trying to get the right ethical behaviours. I think that's the right term. We're pretty much in option C category here. We really want our supply chain to be a partnership with us. It's all very well going on a competitive front where we're nickel and diming for very small gains, and in the long term we won't get the return that we're looking for. So we're looking to partner up with people and really get the best out of what we can all offer. I think that's the best angle I could say. And we're really looking at the moment to try and help that process by multiple purchases and actually having a look at what we can do. We are, for example, we're using lots of liners at the moment, and we tended to buy the liner per job, instead of actually turning to the company that we want to use and saying, we want 17,000 square feet of this or square meters of this, and we'll buy it now. And we'll vest that in. So it's a great way of helping them secure their forward work order with instant injection of cash, and helps us as well. So we're looking for all our kind of angles like that, really. So obviously we still have the normal business day-to-day stuff to do, but we are trying to change it. And as with most change exercises, it does take time and it does take people to believe in it. So we kind of throw in an open arms out to our supply chain to say, come on, join us with this and see how you can help. Our forecast really at the moment for year one is a relatively smaller program that we'd hope for. We have, as you're probably aware, Anglian, there is still a lot of question on a lot of the WINEP amber schemes, which we can't really start until a decision is made. And we also have other challenges, certainly for Anglian, in the fact that we have gone to CMA because of the we didn't quite agree with the standpoint of our business case. So that's ongoing. So I can't really say that much more about that. But besides that, we are still cracking on with our work, and we're trying to put as much forward in year one as we can. Year two is quite a large year, but years 3 onwards are higher than we've ever done before. So that's going to be quite interesting. And we're trying to pull as much of that forward to have the supply chain in place so we can do that. And that's kind of where we are at the moment. I'd love to have any questions on that particular view, and anything controversial on standards and innovative approaches. I'm always up for that as well.
Thanks a million for that, Mark. That was really helpful. So there's a couple of questions that got sent to me directly. But if anyone else has questions for Mark, please just pop them into the chat box there and I will feed them through to him. So Mark, first one for you is, in Am7, are you seeing utilities move away from working with a small number of very large contractors to working with a larger number of mid-sized contractors, i.e. tier 2 and tier 3? And if so, what's the reason for this?
I think it's a matter of balance. We have a number of 1 or 2 larger partners, but what we found is that sometimes there is an element of complacency and an element of feeling secure because yes, we've got the framework, and equally you have if your framework basket is too large, then it's difficult to control and you don't know whether you're getting best value. So what we're trying to do is align people to get the best from them rather than the temptation is to get a large framework provider and then ask them to do things which really isn't their sweet spot. It's not good for them and it's not good for us. So we've actually got to get away from that and get the right people. So I would say we're going neither one way or the other. We're trying to find the best balance. What we really want is best for task that can offer us the best opportunity and offer us the best innovation. I will turn nobody away that comes with a good idea.
That's an important topic, I think, on today's webinar in general, is innovation, seeing as we're talking to Rachel later on Ofwat's Innovation Fund. And I was wondering, have you guys looked into the Innovation Fund yourselves and the possibilities that might provide to the sector? Yes,
we are looking for an opportunity, and why wouldn't we with such a fantastic prize available? This is one of the things that damages our industry is nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to put forward money in what is a very tight margins in our industry into a pot where we can play with it and experiment and do things. So for an opportunity like this to come forward, why wouldn't we seize every opportunity to be a part of it? One of my biggest criticisms is the fact that we are constantly trying to innovate while we deliver efficiently. We're never getting the time to lift our heads up, take a breath, and do something challenging. And if we do, we're doing it while we're delivering, which is always risky. So it'd be lovely to be able to have a real approach. And we do have a good innovation team, and we do have a good innovation approach, but it could always be better.
Yeah,
always.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll touch on that throughout the presentation and ways that we could get better together. Mark, one thing that's been asked a few times to myself is about the maker support that you mentioned during your presentation. Would it be possible to elaborate on that a little bit, because there'd be a lot of businesses in attendance that would work in that area?
Yeah, I missed you on the first part. You cut out on me there. Sorry, Connor.
Okay, no. The maker support.
The maker support, right? In what particular sense?
Well, just you know, what are the supports required by Angling Water throughout Am7 at the moment in that area?
The support required to Angling Water. Well, I suppose in the greatest sense of things, without the support, we can't achieve anything. I'll double back to innovation again. If you look at the challenges that are facing us at the moment, we know we can't do what we've always done and expect a different answer. So the only way we're going to do that is by inviting people with ideas and energy to actually join us. And I, for one, I don't think enough of this is done, because procurement tends to try and operate within strict frameworks, and because it has to, I suppose, but also is at the risk of stifling a few things. And I think there's got to be a better way of opening that up and taking a little bit more of a. I suppose we try and create an environment where we make it safe to fail. And I think that it's quite as my team often say, if I'm not making, if we're not making each other nervous, we're not pushing hard enough. And I think the more people join us in that, the better. I would really put a plea out to everybody who's listening to this, to, if they have an opportunity to actually do something different and they have an idea to do something different, we should maximize on that and really, really push, and not use a framework to hide behind. There is always a way.
And Mark, if that is the case and someone here is thinking, I have a solution that would work well in Angling Water's framework, who should I get in touch with? Is it with Angling directly, or is it through some of your supply chain partners?
We have a number of we have obviously our kind of web-based system, our shop window, where anybody can come with a good idea and post it into the shop window area, or we can actually contact us directly. You can either myself or Lindsay Taylor, who's my head of innovation. We'd always be delighted to hear from anybody who's got an opportunity.
Perfect. Thanks a million, Mark. So I'm just going to see if we have any more questions coming through. So I think we've pretty much covered off on all the questions that have been sent in to me. So Mark, thank you so much for the presentation. It's always great to hear on Angling Water and your progress and plans for Am7. I'm delighted to hear that you were able to hold on to your staff and that furlough, and it looks like things are returning to some sort of normality. So I really credit you guys for that. I'm sure a lot of our businesses will take you up on that offer and reach out to you and your team in the coming weeks. So if you're okay with it, I'll share your contact details with everyone after this presentation.
Absolutely, I welcome it. I'm definitely very, very keen to. So many good ideas never get where they need to be because they're just blocked by stupid, silly things. So by all means, send them through.
Brilliant. Okay, Mark, thank you very much. And guys, if anyone has any questions for Mark post presentation, I will send on his email and you can get in touch with him directly. So thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
And now what we'll do is we'll move on to our contractor view, which will be presented by Lee Horrocks, who is a very experienced water sector consultant that has worked with utilities, with tier 1 contractors, and with smaller tier 2, tier 3 contractors, and successfully has worked with them to win large contracts within the UK water sector. But I would also like to highlight that today is Lee's birthday. So happy birthday, Lee, and thank you for joining us on this day.
Thank you very much.
Will be the highlight.
I take it the word experienced is just alternate for old.
I will not. I'm going to plead the fifth in that one, Lee, and I'll let you lead us through this presentation on your day of slightly more experience. So, Lee, over to you.
Okay, I think probably just to start, it's probably right to say that Mark and I didn't collaborate. I mean, we do know each other of old, but my presentation was put together separately. But interestingly enough, and actually I'm quite glad that a lot of the things that Anglian are doing is exactly what the sector is doing as a whole. If you could maybe flip the first slide for me, Connor. Brilliant. I thought for everybody it might just be worth having a whiz back to 6, 8, 10 months ago to understand where the sector was prior to COVID on AMP7. I don't propose to talk through all those points because I think these slides will be shared with everybody, but it's interesting to see that key drivers for AMP7 were similar but yet different to AMP6. Customer satisfaction is very high, efficiency, innovation, as Mark was talking about, but also value for money. And another big one is protecting the environment. Also, as Mark said, a couple of people have been awarded enhanced status. So in effect, they started AMP7 a year early, and in theory are into the first year of AMP7, but the second year of the programme as we speak. Everybody knew what their determinations were. Some of them did not agree and went to CMA, Anglian being one. But the other thing to remember that the majority of the AMP7 frameworks had been procured by the PLCs prior to the start of COVID. A lot of the AMP6 partners have been rolled on, but there are new entrants across the piece. And as one of the questions that was asked and answered is that tier 2s and SMEs and equipment suppliers have now got a much higher profile in AMP7 than in AMP6. And why? Well, I guess the answers to that are pretty obvious. You know, they're looking for efficiency, they're looking for innovation, value for money. And what is probably quite true is most of those things come from the tier 2s and the SMEs and the equipment suppliers, not necessarily from their tier 1 framework suppliers. There are some that's there, obviously, but the big part of it comes from the tier 2s and SMEs, which is you guys. So, you know, that's a good thing for you guys because you're being elevated up the procurement chain. And I think one really important message from pre-COVID is there was not enough capacity or capability to deliver the AMP7 programme from AMP6 because they have to do more for less, and therefore they need more capacity and more capability. Okay, if we go to the next slide, Connor, please. So during AMP7, and I was really pleased that what Mark was saying echoed everything that I put down on here. So Anglian are absolutely representative of all the PLCs in what they did during COVID. They all worked really hard to keep the supply chain working as best as they could. There was some differing approaches. For example, Scottish Water, because they are a government-owned body, literally initially shut everything down apart from essential works, and then after a couple of months started to open sites up. There were some like Severn Trent and Anglian that had minimal stoppages and basically tried to carry on doing just about everything they'd set out to do prior to COVID being and the social distancing being implemented. lots of different positions in between, but as a whole, everybody was trying to keep the supply chain working. What did they do? Well, they've revised work scope, they've revised programs, they've all adhered to social distancing methods. They've accepted that there's going to be reduced efficiencies on progress because of social distancing. Some of them even agreed early and reducing payment terms to help cash flow for the supply chain, both to the tier ones and to the rest of their supply chain. And in effect, the tier one contractors passed on those enhanced payment terms to their supply chain. And interestingly enough, the companies have accepted that the COVID restrictions are change events. So actually, the supply chain isn't penalised because of COVID, which is a really, really good thing. But during COVID, procurement initiatives continued, obviously, via remote working. And interestingly enough, Thames Water awarded over £700 million worth of frameworks, slap bang in the middle of COVID. And that's both above and below ground. And something that was instigated by British Water, and I'll talk a little bit more about British Water later, was Better Together weekly calls, which at times had between 80 and 100 attendees from the supply chain and from people across the water sector feeding back where they were and what was happening. And that included chief executives of Thames Water, of Southern Water, of United Utilities, procurement directors, commercial directors, etc. So the PLCs were very, very keen to interact and keep the supply chain, i.e. you guys, aware of what was going on in COVID and what they were doing to help you to maintain in business and continue for the deliverance of AMP7 going forward. So we can go to the next slide, Connor, please. So where are we post-COVID? Well, all the companies are pushing to get back up to full capacity, and by that I don't mean water production and treatment of wastewater. I mean full capacity on their capital programs, whether that's minor maintenance or a major new construction. The regulator is looking with the PLCs as to how to address the agreed programs in terms of the cost and time for the short term. But what they've said is they still want the overall delivery requirements of AMP7 delivered within the 5-year time frame, albeit clearly there has been a period of time from March through to now, maybe through to October, November, where they will deliver less and therefore have to deliver more in the future. Most of the framework partners are beyond 70% of their pre-delivery capabilities now, capacities. But it's probably right to say that the social distancing requirements mean that they're never ever going to get beyond 80%. So straight away that means more to do in less time. Future procurement has restarted. For example, Scottish Water will kick off their SR21 lots 1 to 4 actually today. That runs for about 3 months. And it's an interesting thing. The government, regulators and the Environment Agency, and there's a copy of the letter you can see, have wrote to all the PLCs to ask them to help in the country's recovery, to bring major value for money investment forward, i.e. some of the stuff that was set out to do later in AMP7, can you do it earlier? And in effect, can you see stuff that was in AMP8 that will add value, and therefore can we bring that forward? And all the PLCs are looking at that as we speak. And to see what they can do to help the recovery in the country. What does that mean? Well, it actually means overall that we have to do more in less time than was originally envisaged within AMP7. So overall, we have even less capacity or capability to deliver the revised programme than we had prior to COVID. And that is a good thing, because that means that all the PLCs, all the tier ones are going to be looking for more help, more support, more innovation, more efficiency. And that's where you guys can bring those skills and those capabilities to the English marketplace. Next slide, please, Connor. What's happening in the next 18 months? What are the water companies and the tier ones looking for? What are they doing? Well, they're going to be revising and agreeing a new program with the regulator, which in effect means to deliver probably 5 years of work in 4.5 years. They're going to put more out into the marketplace than they'd originally envisaged, and they're looking to take more risks. I mean, it's probably right to say that the water sector has always been viewed as a minimal risk sector. And as Mark said previously, if you carry on doing the same thing, you'll get the same outcomes. They realise that within AMP7, they have to do more things, and they have to do that for less money. So the key thing they have to do is take more risks. So they're looking to deliver more. They need to reduce cost. They're looking to save power, one of their biggest costs. They have to look to improve the environment, reduce carbon, as Mark was saying. A lot of the AMP7 work are MICA-driven projects, so they're not the big civil engineering construction things that have happened during AMPs 2, 3, 4, and 5. They're looking for innovative solutions. They're looking to implement those. They're in fact looking to help you to develop those innovative solutions as well. They want to learn from other sectors because, you know, other sectors are, let's be honest, ahead of the water sector in terms of its views on innovation, on taking risks. So they need to learn that. And they're all, as Mark was saying, looking to promote tier 2s and SMEs up their value chain so they can get more of the above into their businesses. And it's also right to say that the tier 1 partners need additional capability and capacity to help them to deliver the programs of work that they have signed up to deliver over the next 5 years. All of that is saying there's lots and lots of opportunity for new businesses and new entrants to come into the UK water sector marketplace. Next slide, please, Connor. So what should you be thinking about in terms of your route to market or routes to market? And there's a number of areas that need to be in your minds. Within the water companies, again, as Mark mentioned, but they have their equivalent in all of the water companies. There is innovation managers and innovation teams. They're looking for innovation to develop that are in development or that are proven. And that tends to be technical, process, digital and procedural, anything that they believe will help their business. They have procurement teams, and from them you can understand the future workload, content, values and programs, and to see where your capabilities and capacities can fit in. Think about tier 1 consultants. So that's the McDonald's, the Atkins, the Stantec's of this world, who in effect lead design teams in the PLCs quite often. What are they looking for? Well, they're looking in effect the same thing as the water company, but more proven innovations and solutions to their problems, particularly single repeating and risk reducing, things that help the designers to solve the problems that their clients have, which makes them easier to build and much more reliable and long term. They also have project managers within tier 1 consultants who know about cost and program savings. So there's definitely information to be gathered there. Within the tier 1 and tier 2 contractors and SMEs, it's probably right thinking about specific projects, and clearly that information will come from the above. They are project managers and commercial managers, always interested in ideas that save them money and particularly at this day and age will save them time. And they are project engineers who are looking for proven solutions, innovations, help them to save risk and keep repeating solutions into onward moving projects. How can you do that? Well, as always, and this is a bit like teaching your granny to suck eggs, so I'm not going to apologise for it, but I can see you all thinking, oh, well, we know all this, but I don't think there's anything wrong in reinforcing it. You need a strategic plan, and there's an example there of a plan I helped a company called Glenagua to pull together, and you'll probably be familiar with Glenagua, an Irish business, albeit they are owned by a large Portuguese conglomerate. But they kicked off in the UK 5 or 6 years ago, and they literally have been awarded 5-year frameworks with Anglian Water, with Thames Water, and have a long-term framework with Affinity Water now. So they have become a success story in the marketplace. So develop the plan, but make it particular to what you want to market. And out of those plans, make sure you have specific actions and timescales to meet those actions. You can then make direct contract into the companies and the consultants and the contractors that operate in the marketplace. Some you will know, some you won't. If you need help with that, then clearly you can use contacts that Enterprise Ireland have. You could, for something to think about, become a member of British Water. British Water is the leading trade body in the sector, and I sort of speak with the level of interest there, as that I've been a non-executive director of that organisation for some 10 years. I really do believe that it helps, particularly the small and medium-sized enterprises, in gaining a foothold into the sector through knowledge, through relationships, and through introductions, and creating a place for people to meet. I suspect that, as we all know, that's more likely to be in the virtual world, certainly in the short term, but clearly can be face to face if appropriate, and probably in the longer term. And then there is another possibility. If you could click the slide, Connor, thank you. Coming up here are clients, contractors, consultants, tier 1s, tier 2s, SMEs, process contractors, equipment suppliers, that just about covers the whole of the water sector, this side of the water. And speaking personally, I can say that I have either worked for or with or in partnership or overseen work with every single member of that on that slide. And a lot of the people who are in senior positions in those organisations, I sort of came up through the sector with. So I have a lot of personal relationships, and obviously with the support of Enterprise Ireland, I can help you to form relationships there, and to market the skills that you have, against your marketing plan that we talked about before. And I think probably that just about covers it. And happy to take via Connor, obviously, any and all questions that may have been raised. I think you're on mute, Connor. Connor, I think you're on mute. Connor, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, loud and clear.
Very good, very good. This happened a couple of times, guys, so bear with us. But Lee, I just want to say thanks a million for that presentation. It was extremely practical and very relevant for the Irish supply chain in attendance today. So I know that we have one person with their hand up. I believe Tony Byrne had his hand up there. So Tony, if you could type your question into the chat, I can pass it on to Lee here.
If he wants to ask it direct, Connor, you can just put his picture on and ask me direct.
Yeah, listen, if you can, if you want to unmute yourself and see if you can ask away. Okay, we'll see if it comes through now in a second, Lee, right. But I have a couple of questions that were sent to me directly. So one of them was, what do you think the COVID impact might be on new market entrants in Am7? And I know you touched on this a little bit there, but I think the follow-up to it was just how should they be adapting to increase their chances of getting contracts and winning contracts during Am7? And some examples of that you might be able to touch on would be strategic partnerships and things like that.
Yeah, I think pretty obviously one of the key ways is to ensure that you can work almost, if not as efficiently remotely as you can prior to COVID, because clearly the whole world has changed in terms of how we do business nowadays. You know, I suspect that this webinar that we're having today might have been a conference face-to-face a year ago. People with speakers standing up and questions answered direct. So a key thing is learn to live in the new world. Be clear on what it is you're marketing, because I think that's probably going to be a harder thing to market remotely than it would be in a face-to-face approach. All of the PLCs are starting, and Mark and I were chatting prior to the webinar starting earlier, are starting to see the real benefits of them working together now, which, to be honest, never really happened before. They all operated pretty independently of each other. But they're really seeing the benefits that if a good idea comes out for United Utilities, for example, why shouldn't they share those ideas and innovations with the other water PLCs in the marketplace? I think for the Irish SMEs and equipment providers on the call, it's pull together a plan, understand your plan, understand what you are trying to bring into the marketplace and where it will add value, and whether that is as an innovation, as an efficiency, as saving electricity, as being more cost effective, as being revolutionary, and then look where is the best place for you to go forward with marketing that innovation in the sector. And as I just said, I am, and I know Enterprise Ireland is happy to help the individual businesses in understanding what they want to do and where that route might be. But I think that the overall message for me is, in AMP7 going forward, they have to do more than they originally envisaged to do in less time, and therefore you're sort of not pushing a fully open door, but the door isn't closed, it's certainly ajar, and looking for people to start to put pressure against that door and open it.
Right, thanks Lee. Another one that's just come through here is, outside the AMP, what type of opportunities does the Environment Agency provide to companies from the Irish supply chain in the water space?
Very, very good question. And in effect, you could say that the Environment Agency are another water PLC. Clearly, they don't treat water like the English PLCs do, but they handle and manage it. But they have a very similar procurement approach, where but theirs is regionalized. So they have a number of regional framework, tier 1 framework partners who deliver works for them in all their different regions, and they have a supply chain of consultants and a supply chain of contractors. So actually, if your product is, or innovation is designed to where it could work within the within the Environment Agency's skill set, you could treat them literally as another English or Scottish water PLC, because they work in exactly the same way. And in effect, and here's an interesting fact, that the operations director of the Environment Agency, who's the number 2, sits on the British Water Board as a non-executive director. So even in the Environment Agency see themselves as part of the water supply chain.
That's great, Ian. I think it's evident whenever you look at the publications like Water Briefing, you see, every 5th or 6th article about the Environment Agency and a project that they're looking for partners on. So absolutely, it's very useful for attendees to recognise that there are opportunities with the Environment Agency outside of this particular AMP site.
Yeah, and any help that you and I would give them would include the Environment Agency as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't see any other questions coming through at the moment. I think, Lee, you might be sticking with us till the end. So
yeah, I'll happily wait till the end. No problem whatsoever.
Perfect. So there might be something that comes through, or even there could be some comments that you share after Rachel's presentation. But Lee, I want to say thanks a million, and I hope that this is the highlight of your birthday.
I think what I'd like to say to everybody is
that.
Stay safe. That's the important thing.
That's it. So again, Lee is working with us in a strategic capacity, and there could be opportunities to work with him on a one-to-one basis, which I'll discuss later. But if you do want to ask Lee any questions, you can see his email and phone number up there, which again we will share just like Mark's at the end of today's presentations. So thank you to Lee, and we will pass on to Rachel. So Rachel is the project manager for Ofwat 200 million innovation fund for Am7. I'm delighted to have her here today. So Rachel, are you there? Rachel, are you there now?
Can you hear me, Connor?
I can hear you now. Don't worry.
Okay,
I was in
sorry. I have to apologise in advance if my connection goes. I've heard everything fine so far, so hopefully it will hold out for this. And it was great hearing from me, and that Mark is also looking at engaging with the fund, so that's really exciting for us. Just a quick introduction. I work on Ofwat's customer policy, but also on its innovation programme. It's really good to be able to actually engage with SMEs, because you guys are not, strictly speaking, a traditional close group that we have tended to reach out to in the past, but we're in a new world now, so this is exciting for us. So today I'm going to focus on the Innovation Fund. I should flag, you may be familiar, that the consultation that we published back in May, we are finalising our decisions on that next week. So I'm just waiting on a final legal review of that. I will try and give you some spoilers, but I may need to be a little bit more candid in some areas, and hopefully you'll understand that. So Connor, do you want to flip the slide on, please? Great. So just quickly, a little bit of background. We announced last year that we wanted a new approach to driving transformational innovation. And as part of that, we published our plans to establish a £200 million innovation fund, albeit that was under very different circumstances than we are in today. We published that in December. We have considered, though, the implications of the recent crisis, and do believe that this has just served to reinforce the need for greater collaboration, for us to work together as the sector looks to address future challenges, and innovation really is going to be at the heart of that. And so we are still going to be moving ahead with our innovation competition, so that's great news. We do believe that the adoption of innovative approaches is key to delivering long-term resilience and great customer service at an affordable price. The funding that we are introducing is central to delivering our strategy, which we published last autumn, and achieving our vision. And the slide sort of illustrates our key focus of that strategy and vision. The sector does face unprecedented pressures in the shape of climate change and population growth. And we recognise that it will need to step up to make sure that it can continue to deliver reliable, resilient and safe water, whilst protecting and enhancing our natural environments and demonstrating greater public value. We really do want to see companies in England and Wales working more effectively together and with the supply chain to tackle these challenges. We think that more collaboration is the only way to do that. And we're pleased to see that the sector has already started moving towards this. A couple of months ago, they published their first sector-wide innovation strategy to drive this change, and they're looking to finalise that in September, and we're working really closely with them on that work. So moving to the fund itself, our Innovation Fund is designed to go further than the incremental improvements that we set out in the final determination to address the key strategic challenges that I've mentioned. It does complement the PR19 framework, but it aims to focus efforts in the longer term. We want to see innovations that deliver a step change in technology, a change in the use of systems, processes and people, and including commercial arrangements. But we are particularly looking for entries into the competition with innovation in the 5 following areas, and this will really guide our assessment of projects. So that relates to net zero emissions, restoring and improving the ecological status of our water environments for current and future customers, understanding the long-term operational resilience and infrastructure risks to customers, testing new ways of conducting core activities to deliver wider public value, and exploring opportunities associated with open data, stimulating innovation and collaboration. And this is through things like new business models and service offerings to end customers. We recognise that there is opportunity within these broader themes to identify more specific issues, and that's where the sector strategy really comes into play. If you could just change the slide, please, Connor. So in May this year, we consulted on the design and implementation of the innovation competition and sought views on the outstanding policy issues. We were really pleased that we received over 50 responses, which has been in line with previous consultations and publications we've had on this topic. So interest is really continuing to be there for it, which is great. And those responses came from not just the incumbent companies, but from across the value chain, consumer groups, environmental groups, and we got a couple from outside of the sector as well. As I mentioned, we're publishing our decision document next week, and in this we will set out our final positions on a number of areas. And this will form the basis of the first pilot rounds of the competition. I'll talk a little bit more about the timetable. We may amend these decisions following monitoring, learning and reviews of the pilot period, because we recognise that this is new for the sector and for us as a regulator. And so what we don't want to do is commit to foundations for the whole 5 years of the competition, when really we need to stop and have a look and see how it's going after a year or so. So just on the slide, it shows you the sort of key areas. These are around intellectual property rights and royalties, risk sharing between companies, third parties and customers, the role of open data to facilitate innovation, the protection of the innovation funds themselves, and given that it's customer money, how that's processed, and importantly, the timetable. As I said, I don't really want to get into too much detail on these areas, mainly because the legal team is just doing a final check and I'll probably trip up. But we're publishing early next week, so you haven't really got much longer to wait. I will give you a bit more detail on who can access the fund, though. It will be open to the 17 licensed water and wastewater companies. It'll also be open to the NAV variations, the new appointment variations. They can access the fund either on their own, as a group with one another, or in partnership with others. As I've mentioned, though, we are really, really keen to see bids coming forward involving partnerships and collaborations between the companies and with other stakeholders in the sector and beyond. Frankly, a bid that comes from a sole water company is unlikely to be considered favourably. Anyone else who's interested in entering the competitions must be in partnership with somebody that can enter the competitions directly. You don't need to be somebody that currently works in or with the water sector. We're actually quite keen to get people from outside of the sector and companies looking for that, for new skills and experience that they can bring to the water and wastewater sector in England and Wales. We're going to take a flexible approach towards the type and size of projects. We don't have in mind exactly what those projects or the ideal project looks like. I think that would be preempting innovation and perhaps stifling innovation. So we're really open to seeing a range of projects, both in the early stages of rollout of thinking, but also those closer to rollout. On that, proposals will We are looking for proposals that are closer to the rollout, of course, because we want to see benefits for consumers delivered. But we do recognise that there are still innovations at the early stage of incubation that will be of value coming through this competition, and we welcome those new ideas and solutions. We're intending to have one application process that will be designed to be transparent, proportionate and scalable, and we're fortunate that colleagues in other regulators have been through this before, and we can take some strong learning around making that application as simple and proportionate as possible. On the timetable, in 2021, we're going to be running 2 competitions that the water companies, new entrants, can enter alongside their partners. The first will be what's called an Innovation in Water Challenge. This is focused on smaller projects, typically less than 250k. We're opening this up from January, and it's a real opportunity for third parties to pitch directly to water companies and assist their access to the innovation funding. So this is really about bringing partners and people from across the value chain into the competition and encouraging those water companies to reach out to them. We'll follow this with a main competition. So I should say, actually, the total value of that Innovation in Water Challenge is likely to be around 2 million. That's a guide, though. We're not set that we will hit the 2 million mark, or if we have a lot of projects, we might go over it. But as a guide, that's the sort of scale we're thinking of, made up of projects of less than around 250k. The main competition, first round will probably be around a £40 million total. It'll be open for entries around April 2021. So we will be able to build in some learning on the application process from the Innovation in Water Challenge into that main competition. The main competition will target larger, more strategic projects and also include enabling activities, things like better sharing of data, data capabilities. The main competition enables water companies the opportunity to put forward these larger projects. The competition itself, as I've mentioned, will only be open directly to the licensed water companies, but we are keen to keep this under review because we want to make sure that there is access for third parties. How are we going to run this? Those of you that are familiar with the consultation will be aware that we considered using a supporting organisation to help us administer the fund, partly because it's a fairly big job. The other reason is that as an economic regulator, this is something new to us, and we don't have the necessary skills and experience to be able to get this off the ground in the time that we would like to. So we are opening up the tender process for that role next week, alongside publishing our final decisions. The organisation will work with us to design the application and assessment process for the fund. This will include the process for applying bids, the detailed assessment criteria, bid assessment process and selection of an independent advisory panel to help with the decision-making process, the monitoring of those successful projects, and the process and oversight around intercompany settlements for winning bids. We've also mentioned in our consultation document, we recognise the need for collaboration across the sector with the value chain, with you guys. And that's why it's really important that the Innovation in Water Challenge is a key kickoff for us in January 2021. If you just want to move on, Connor, to the final slide, please. So next steps. I'd ask that you watch out for our publication next week. I think it's likely to be Tuesday, but please don't hold me to that. Getting things uploaded to the website in August is always a bit of a challenge. We are continuing to work with the sector through autumn as we finalise that application and assessment process, and we hope to have our supporting organisation in place in late autumn, and they will also bring the necessary skills to help us with that. We recognise that there's opportunity and learning and for evolution following each round of the competition. So particularly after that first Water Innovation Challenge competition in January and the main competition in April, we will be looking to see how we can make improvements to that application process and indeed whether the policy needs any amendments. If you would like to be kept informed, I've put an email address down on here. It's best to go through that. You're welcome to come to me, but it's likely that it will be a slower response. We will add you to the stakeholder list and you can be kept up to date with all of the correspondence that comes from us in the coming weeks and months. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks a million, Rachel. That was great. And as I expected, we've been inundated with questions, so I hope you're ready.
I'll try.
So the first question that's come through is, can Irish companies access funding here if they do not have a UK office but do operate in the UK market?
They would have to access it in partnership with one of the English or Wales companies. And the reason for that in the first instance is because the fund is funded by English and Welsh customers in the first instance. And so we are looking to provide some protection over the way in which those funds are distributed. It is something, though, that we will keep under review and think about whether broader access to it would be beneficial for later rounds of the competition.
Perfect. So then, if you need to collaborate with some of these English and Welsh companies, some of our clients have had difficulty in accessing these water companies previously. So just how will this competition help them to access them?
Well, the first key message is that as I said, the incumbent English and Welsh companies, the expectation is that they do collaborate to be successful. We have said that sole bids are allowed, but between us, they won't be looked on as favorably as if they are in collaboration with each other or with third parties. So that's the first key message, and I would expect that to drive hopefully a change in culture within the incumbent companies. The second is the work that the sector is doing itself on the joint sector innovation strategy. One of the key themes in that relates to collaboration, and we're really pleased to see that. As part of that, they're looking at developing a centre of excellence, which will open up access to the English and Welsh companies when it comes to inviting innovative ideas and projects. So I'd really urge people to seek out that joint innovation strategy. Uckware sort of leads on that, and you can find links through their website, but it's a really useful way to get involved in the sector.
That's great, and I think that kind of touches on this next question. Will SMEs be able to access contacts of innovation teams and utilities via Ofwat, or should they be making direct contact with these teams to discuss their innovations?
Yeah, we're not the best place to do that. It's definitely through the sector innovation strategy or reaching the companies directly, as Mark was talking about earlier. I would expect to see in the engagement that we're having directly with the companies is that they need to be more open in the way in which companies, third parties, SMEs, the value chain outside the sector can get in touch with them, because this is not a new message. We've been hearing this through the whole development of our innovation policies. And so being more accessible is a real expectation that we have on the companies through this. The Innovation in Water Challenge is, this isn't approved language, but it's a bit like a dragon's den, whereby third parties can come and present their ideas to water companies, and they can join up. It's almost like a real-time event that we're envisaging. So that's another way which we really hope to increase the relationships between third parties, innovators, value chain, and those innovation managers and the teams within the companies.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I might touch base with you in the next few weeks, Rachel, just to get more information on that I can feed back into the cluster. just so they can get the Dragon's Den pitches ready. But that's perfect. And the last question I have here then is, do Ofwat collaborate with any universities in the UK?
Not directly, we don't, no. We do reach out to academics to help us when we are developing policy, but it's usually on a project by project basis. We haven't to date formally, particularly on this project, reached or collaborated with universities. It's not to say that we won't do or shouldn't do, but we haven't as yet. So feel free to get in touch. We do utilise academic reports, things like from Cranfield University. We've got a couple of board members who are experts, particularly on the economic side of things in academia. So we do bring that insight in, but we haven't as yet formally collaborated with the university on this.
That's brilliant. Okay, Rachel, thanks a million. I think by the sound of the amount of questions that came through, by the way you dealt with it, I think it was really beneficial to our cluster to hear that today. And as I said, I'll touch base with you to get a little bit more information to feed back to the guys. But in the meantime, you can email innovation@ofwat.gov.uk if you have any questions. So thanks a million for that, Rachel. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, guys. So now we're on to the final stretch of our presentation, and as I said, I'll be taking the last lap. So I just want to quickly touch on some supports that we provide from an Enterprise Ireland UK perspective. So one is the Municipal Water Sector Report, which we produced early this year and presented at our event in March for anyone that missed it. It pretty much gives an overview of the sector, the background to the sector, the players in the sector from your utilities to your tier ones, and then it goes into who works with who, looks at the events that are coming up in the sector that we recommend you go to, which obviously will be virtual in the coming few months and potentially years. So if you haven't looked at that, or if you think anyone from your team would benefit from reading it, please get in touch with myself or Dara and we can share a copy of the report with you. It's very beneficial, especially for people who are new to the UK municipal water market. The next thing then, I'm going to run through it with you and just practically for a couple of seconds, is our Am7 push database. So myself and Dara, working with some of our market experts, have been able to pull information on all tenders that have been awarded and are upcoming in Am7. And we've updated that to a database that you can access as an Enterprise Ireland client. So I'm just going to share it with you now so you can see how we work it. So you can see here, this is the Am7 Contract Database. So we have a little starting section that explains how you can use this. And essentially what we do is we share news and we share information on who is working with you in the sector. To the sector to help you improve your business development over the course of Am7. So we have our news tab, which we update on a regular basis, and we have links to all those news sections and headlines. So a lot of this is upcoming tenders that you might be interested in, and they cover a number of bases. And even in this, we don't just cover Am7, we do try to put in some information about Scottish Water, Northern Ireland Water, and the Environment Agency too. So that can be useful to stay up to date with what's going on in the water sector. But then we also have tabs for each of the water utilities. So you can see what companies they're working with, what's the description of the contract they're working on, and then what was the estimated value of the contract. And this is all publicly available information that we've accumulated. So we have that. So this could be useful to go through and work out, okay, what projects do we have capability in? What can we work on? You can then go to who is working on that project with Anglian Water or Welsh Water, Northumbrian Water, or whoever else. And you can say, well, I think we actually have a solution, or we can partner up with these guys. And that gives you an opportunity to kind of create a target list of potential customers or partners in the UK. And at that stage, when you've worked out who is relevant for you and who you like to work with, you can get in touch with myself or Dara, or work with Lee in a one-to-one capacity, and hopefully we can work on creating a structure that you can use to access those businesses and have a legitimate proposal for them. So that's just a quick run through again for any Enterprise Ireland client companies. You will be able to have access to that push database. So please get in touch with myself or Dara if you don't already. So then next up, as I mentioned before, we've just agreed a partnership with Lee. And you saw there during his presentation how practical his advice is. He's straight talking. He has a huge amount of experience in the sector, and it's his birthday today, as I mentioned. So he is someone who would be very beneficial to work with on a one-to-one basis. And if you do think that there's something that you could use Lee's support with, please get in touch with us, and we will filter through to Lee and try to arrange some support in that capacity. And again, that is just to Enterprise Ireland client companies. And then lastly, we do have lots of events like this. We have webinars, we have podcasts, we share updates on our cluster and on the sector on our LinkedIn page. So if you can and you would like to stay up to date with information sessions like this, or podcasts like one we shared in March or April, please do follow us. It is Enterprise Ireland UK. So that is all from me. I did try to keep it short, given I didn't want to take any more of your time. And as I said, I'm not the main speaker here today. So I'm going to give just a couple of minutes to extra questions if they come through. So if they come through, I will pass them on to the relevant presenter.
Connor, in the meantime, while the questions are coming in, maybe I can just take 30 seconds. Just to address a few points that have come through in the chat there. Both Lee and Mark on the strategy point, have said, Lee has said that British Water can help with the innovation teams in the water companies via their innovation group. So that's something to remember as well. And Mark has said there are many ways to reach us in the wider industry regarding innovation. There's the Water Innovation Network, Water Hub, Water Start, etc., not to mention British Water. So again, if any of the companies on the call today have any questions or would like some support accessing innovation teams at the water utilities, do get in touch with Enterprise Ireland, and we can help support you on that one. On British Water, and Lee gave them gave British Water a very good plug earlier in his presentation. But just to mention as well that Enterprise Ireland in London, we do actually have a partnership agreement in place with British Water, and we have done so for the last couple of years. And we're currently finalising the partnership agreement for the coming year. So stay tuned for that. There will be some joint initiatives and events and webinars like this coming on stream. So stay tuned for further details. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to embarrass Connor now, and just to say thank you for his work. Many of you might not know, but Connor is actually leaving Enterprise Ireland in 2 weeks' time at the end of the month. And I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Connor for all the work and the support that he's provided to Enterprise Ireland clients over the last 2 years. It's been really valuable, and I think I echo all the clients when I pass along our thanks to Connor. If you have any questions past August, before Connor moves on to his new role in the tech startup environment, you can pass them along to me. Okay. Thanks, Connor.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks for the embarrassment there. I suppose I deserve it after embarrassing Lee with the birthday joke. So yes, I'm leaving Enterprise Ireland, so thank you for all of your engagement over my 2 years with Enterprise Ireland. If you'd like to stay in touch, obviously send me an email and I can pass on my personal details, or just connect with me on LinkedIn. But on today's event, I want to thank you all for coming and engaging. We will be sending through a recording of this presentation, a copy of the slides, and the contact details for Mark and Lee, and also we'll just reiterate some of those innovation points and hopes that we were touching on throughout the presentation and in the chat box. So thank you all for coming. Thank you to Lee, Mark and Rachel for presenting. Thank you to Dara for embarrassing me, and thank you all for coming. So if you have any questions, feel free to pass them through to myself and Dara after. But before then, enjoy the rest of your days, and we'll chat soon. Thanks, guys.